Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Passionate Talk. I am your host, Gary Karp, and this is episode number 16. Today is part 4 and the final part, the last part of my conversation with Reenee Cummins, and I really hope that you've enjoyed parts 1, 2, and 3. If you've missed any of the previous parts of these conversations, you can find them at the website, www.passionatetalk.com, or head on over to iTunes and find Passionate Talk in their podcast section. You can download any of the previous parts of this conversation with Reenee or any of the previous episodes. You could also subscribe by hitting the subscribe button, and Passionate Talk will be delivered to wherever you listen to podcasts, every episode, all the time. Also, if you're at iTunes, please do us a favor and leave us a 5-star rating and give us a really good review. It's one of the ways that other listeners can find our podcast and enjoy and hopefully find some value from these conversations. It would really mean a lot to me. So please go ahead, head on over to iTunes, hit the subscribe button, leave a ranking, and leave a review. Today, and the final part of our conversation with Reenee, we're going to talk about parallel universes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the law of attraction. So right now, sit back, relax, make yourself a cup of coffee, maybe some tea, and get ready to listen to the final part of my conversation with Reenee.
So here's somebody who, like I said, had no idea of what heaven was like, and so he just drifted through the whole universe, which is fine with me. And of course, there are the books, and you can find them both in the New Age as well as the Christian section where people went to hell.
When you said books, and I wasn't going to go to the hell, but if our listeners want to learn more about past lives and near-death experiences, specifically past lives, and it's going to bring up the second question. There's a wonderful book out there by Dr. Brian K. Weiss, changed my life, called Many Lives, Many Masters.
Yep.
I highly recommend it to anyone who is curious about near-death experiences, and especially past lives and past life regression. Now, the second question I wanted to ask you, and this is going to be slightly more into the metaphysical and into the string theory, going back to Stephen Hawking, is the concept of when something happens, every decision, every event that happens in our lives, and it could be major, it could be minor. I like to think it's major because my brain just can't wrap my head around every decision. It shatters the universe and creates a new parallel universe or a new parallel reality.
Right.
So when I was hit by the car, and I survived, obviously, I'm sitting here talking with you, there is a universe where I died, and that Gary Karp does not exist. There is a universe that I survived, but I never learned to walk again, so I am permanently paralyzed. What is your feelings on parallel universes and how they are created?
Okay, I'm going to take you back to the way that it works for me, and you get back at that quantum physics level, and this also explains how can you have all of this stuff going on at once. One of the ideas behind quantum physics is that the thing doesn't happen until the observer sees it.
Yep.
Okay, you've heard of that.
Yep. Schrodinger's cat, right?
Yeah. Everything else is plastic probability. So if we keep everything at an energy level, I mean, the universe can store tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of energy. So all of those realities where other things happened, now another fragment of your soul may have decided to see that. Maybe the entirety of you, and the entirety of us is much bigger than we understand, maybe part of the entirety of you felt it was important for you to experience the factoid of losing your ability to walk. And maybe now you find yourself a lot more compassionate towards people who have lost that ability.
And I do. I find myself more compassionate towards everybody since that experience.
And realize that, if we really take this all the way, realize that someplace out there, you're the driver that hit you.
Okay, now you just turned my brain into a pretzel.
Yeah, okay, but that's, I mean, that's the idea. But I think, to me, what it is, and of course we can only see what we can see. Maybe you can sense that these other things have happened to other parts of you. But right now, you only, it's good old Ram Dass, be here now. Be concerned with what you see in front of you and what's the next thing you're going to create. But yeah,
Now that brings up an excellent paradox when you start going down the metaphysical and spiritual rabbit hole, which is we're all taught mindfulness. We talked a lot about and touched on the Eastern philosophies that teach about being in the present, being mindful. It's a very popular subject nowadays. Every yoga studio in New York City offers a class on mindfulness and mindfulness training. Even in psychology, there's the movement over the last 10 years of positive psychology movement, which teaches you about gratitude and teaches you to be mindful and be in an ever-present state to lessen the stress and anxiety. It's even being accepted in regular science, psychology rather, as a practice for healing. Yet, if we are to go down that rabbit hole and really understand the fact that we are just an individuation of a group whole, if we are to understand that there may be parts of our soul that wants to experience other things and breaks off from us and creates this parallel universe that lives in between our touch or in the membranes of the borders of the universe, if you will, then we run into a situation that in order to understand that, we then have to leave that mindfulness practice of not being present in the here and now because we must travel to a bigger place. It's very similar to the issues you were talking about, how everything breaks down with quantum physics and quantum science.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's hard to see the duality of the mind, which we all can learn. Let me give you a really good example of what happens. Let's go back to our law of attraction. I'm going to go back to my story about, okay, I'm going to go live in Florida. So I get the image again of my car parked in front of the VAB with the California license plates. Now, I have an opportunity. I can sit there and think about that and get all warm and fuzzy and very happy about it. I can return to the present and start going, oh my God, if I move to Florida and my house gets hit by a hurricane, I could lose everything I have.
Oh, I know where you're going. Please continue. I am so guilty of this. This is still a big challenge of mine.
Oh, we're all guilty. No offense, Gary, but I must have been a Jewish mother in another lifetime. That's all I'm going to tell you.
You got that guilt right down, Pat.
I could have been a warrior in a Jewish village in Russia.
Right.
I'm sure that was one of my past lives.
Look, you're worried that your kids are not going to call you? They're not going to say, oh my God, are they eating correctly? What, are you going to move down to Florida with all the hurricanes down there and the mudslides? And what, are you crazy?
But what happens, of course, is now, you could go back to this idea of, you have to see it, to create it. The old Schrodinger cat thing, you have to you see it and then you create it. What you've done is you've scattered your energy with the thing about, oh my God, the hurricane and da 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 da, and we do that.
Not only have you scattered your energy, but more specifically, you took that image that you were moving towards, and remember, we spoke about focus, follow one course until success, and you really need to hold that picture in your head, and you now took that positive picture and you replaced it with a negative picture. And the way the brain works is that it will give us what we want. It will focus on whatever we tell it to focus on. So if you're focusing on coming out of the spiritual metaphysical aspects of the law of attraction and explaining a little bit about the psychology of what's going on, when you focus on something, you're really telling your brain what to filter out. Because there is so much stuff that goes on every day that our brains are deletion creatures, and it will only focus on what we tell it. So if you're holding a positive intention, if you're holding the picture of what you want in your head, and it's a positive picture, your brain will filter out everything that doesn't match up with that positive picture, that doesn't match up with
Right.
that goal that you want. So when you replace that with an anxious picture of the hurricanes and the cockroaches that fly, and yes, they're called palmetto bugs, and they are scary, folks, then your brain is going to look for everything to make you anxious. It's the same thing when people say, I want $1 million. What the brain is going to do is give you exactly what you're asking for. Not the $1 million, but the wanting of that $1 million. So it's going to filter out everything good, and it's going to show you all your bills piling up. It's going to show you your dead-end job. It's going to show you your neighbor's new car and their vacation. So you have to be very careful when you set your intention on holding that picture. And equally as important, you need to be aware of your self-talk and self-dialogue. It has to support the intention you're setting and the picture that you're holding in your head.
And then, like I said, and you can tell when it's time to come out of it. Because like I said, if you're networking, if you're doing something to work on what you're trying to attract, that's good. But you can't, you sit down and you type somebody an email that's in a business you want to go into. You want to get into public relations, and you see a job that it's an entry-level job for public relations, and you happen to have met the person that works for that company once, and you write them an email saying that you're interested in this job and how do they feel about what they do and one thing and another, and you hope that they remember you. And if you're sitting there telling yourself, oh my God, this person can't remember me from Adam, and why would they write to a loser like me? And there's that magic word, loser. You're not going to get an email back. And if you go, please come on, and your email's nice and warm, you might be surprised.
Yes, and the other thing...
You might really be surprised.
The other thing to that, and I learned this from my business coach, is that you just can't do it once. If you send that email to that person that you want the job with, or that you ask that girl or that guy out for coffee and they say no. No is just meaning not now. It doesn't mean not ever. So you have to keep at it. That's also the part of the law of attraction that people fail to understand and that they fall down on. They do it once and they say, well, that's it, didn't work. I mean, I show it, I talk about it with my clients in this way all the time, that would they have their child when they're starting to walk and the child stumbles around and falls down? Would they pick up the child, put him back in the crib and goes, well, they failed, they're never going to walk. That's it. No, you would let the kid fumble and bumble and stumble around until finally, as we all do, they stand up and walk, and 18 years later walk out the door. That's a key component to success, whether you believe in the law of attraction or you don't. That stick-to-itiveness to keep at it. And I'll give you a little bit of a story, an anecdote with that, is I was going after a person that I wanted to get to be a client. We've had a couple of light conversations, and she seemed very interested to work with me. And every time I reached out to set up an interview to try and close the deal, something had come up. The car broke down. There was a medical emergency. The parents were sick. Something kept happening. And I sat down with my business coach and I said to her, well, I've been trying to get this client and I don't really think she's interested because 3 straight times she's blown me off. So I'm just going to wait. If she's serious, she can come to me. And my business coach looked at me and said, she will never do that. You have already set yourself up for failure. Write her another email, send her a text, pick up the GD phone and contact her again. So, like the good little student I am, I did. And the next day we met for coffee, and she is now my client and paid me very well for how I'm helping her and how I'm working with her. So you have to keep at it. That stick-to-itiveness. Just because you failed once doesn't mean you're going to fail always. Failure doesn't mean you failed. Failure is just an unexpected result.
I'll give you another ultimate failure. And this happened, and I look back on it now, and it was funny, but at the time, it wasn't funny. We had to go through levels and levels and levels of people in 2 different organizations to get all the paperwork to move across country. I was watching the evening news, and it was up in the air. It looked like it was going to happen, and I was doing my visualization and everything. But they said on the evening news that was it. Every big company had quit offering move packages to people. That if you wanted to move to another city or a state, you had to come up with the money yourself. Well, you talk about a bucket of cold water in your face. I mean, now you're talking serious money. You've moved. You've moved a good distance. You know what it's like.
Several times, yes.
And I turned to my husband and I said, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And he says, don't even think about that. Don't even think about that. And that's the way he is. If he doesn't want it in his reality, he says, don't think about that. And so he walked out of the room, and the next morning about 10 a.m., they brought him a piece of paper to sign that was a complete move package to move us to Florida.
Cool.
So my point is, again, you're going to get as you move along, because that's just life and the universe and other people's experiences. That's the thing we don't realize is because we watch the news, we do social media, we do all this stuff, our realities bleed all over each other. And just because you see it doesn't mean that that's your reality.
Exactly.
And like I said, boom, overnight. The only reason I remember it was because I made such a big deal out of it. And then the next day, it was a cosmic joke. It was like, well, there was my turn on the cosmic whoopee cushion. I heard that stupid story about not getting what I wanted, and the next day I got what I wanted.
And right now, Reenee, first of all, I got to tell you, I'm having a blast with this conversation. And I'm going to have you back, because I have a page full of notes from when we talked off air and we did our pre-interview. And 90% of it, we never even got to. We've had such a great time with this talk.
Oh, I know.
So we're definitely have you back on so we can talk about the things like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Steve Case and Steve Jobs and how they use their vision and their spirituality to really change not only the technological world, but how we look and do things, how we work, how we shop, and how we look at energy and just do things like drive. And Elon Musk is doing some wonderful stuff that I can't wait to get into with you. I also think that I've got enough stuff here right now for maybe 2 or 3 episodes.
I figured you were going to tell me that.
So you might be my first 3-parter here, and I have no problem with that, because this has been a fantastic interview.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun.
But right now, because I know me, I can talk about this, and we could be here for another 4 hours, but my computer's battery will run out.
Okay, well, I do want to say one thing before I go. I did jump out, and I did find the book I was talking about that was The Neurosurgeon. His name is Eben Alexander. And if you look him up, you can just look him up on Alexander on Amazon. And the name of the book is Proof of Heaven. And it was a New York Times bestseller. So again, when we talk about how do we open minds, well, there you go. This man very bravely tried to open everybody's mind by talking about a near-death experience. And you can get that as an ebook for a tablet. But it's definitely worth the read.
And what I'd like to do right now, Reenee, is let you plug anything you want to. I know we did not talk about your artwork at all, but you are a very fine artist, a very good artist. So go ahead, plug whatever you want. Let people know how they can get in touch with you if they want some sort of spiritual counseling, or want your services as a wise woman, or just want to find some piece of art. How could they get in touch with you and plug away?
Okay, your best bet if you want to get in touch with me, and I'll make sure Gary gets this, is ARTSYIRYNE, that's Artsy Irene, which is one of my nicknames, at gmail.com. And depending on what you're interested in, I do fractal art, I do all sorts of crazy things, and if anybody wants to get a hold of me, that's the best way to do it. And I'll be looking for some emails, and we'll go from there.
Do you have a website or any of the artwork up on your Facebook page that listeners could view?
I don't anymore. If something rolls up, I'm one of those artists that I'm between. I'm between series. People don't understand this about artists. You do something and you do it till you can't do it anymore, and you just have to take a break. You have to take a break, and I realized I'd gotten there, and I took a break from my fractal stuff, and I'm going into some new stuff hopefully by the end of the year. But like I said, because everything's so out of date, I'd rather just talk to people about it.
Okay.
So,
Well, folks, if you want to get in touch with Reenee, I will definitely put the email in the notes and up on the show page of Passionate Talk. That would be www.passionatetalk.com, where you can find all the podcast episodes, including Reenee's, and all the information on how to contact Reenee and all my other guests. Reenee, again, I definitely going to have you back, because every time you speak, another subject pops into my head, and just the basis of creativity and how that works would be a fascinating conversation to have with you.
oh, good, because I'm doing another book on that right now. I mean, that's one of those things that, again, you want to go down a rabbit hole. Yeah, creativity. Yeah, that's a 3-hour show right there.
So you are an author on top of everything else.
Yeah, I've had a lot of articles published on different websites and in some magazines.
Wonderful. Is there any place where people can go to look at those articles, or do you have a book up on Amazon that they could check out?
I don't. I'll just be honest with you. I don't right now.
Reenee, there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me.
No, like I said, I'm between gigs. I believe in a second and a third act, and I'm working on the third act right now.
Okay. Well, if you do want to reach out to her, she could also find her on Facebook.
Yeah, and that's Reenee Cummins. And the only thing I'd say to me is, if you want to friend me, let me know that you heard me on Gary Karp's show. Because I get an awful lot of Russian sailors that want to befriend me, and I have nothing against the Russian Navy, but I don't need a Russian sailor.
Well, that could be a good time, do svidaniya. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, little vodka, yeah.
Oh, a lot of vodka, if you've seen some of those pictures. Anyway, Reenee, it's been a pleasure. I do want to thank you very much for spending some time here, and we'll talk to you later.
Okay, guy.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Well, folks,
Bye-bye.
That's it. That's my final part of my conversation with Reenee. We both thought we had enough for 3 episodes. Turns out we had enough for 4. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I loved talking about Schrodinger's cat with her, and her phrase, plastic possibilities. I love that phrase. Everything is in flux, nothing is set, and every decision we make can create a brand new tomorrow for us, not just in this universe, but in the ones that exist all around us. The importance of stick-to-itiveness that we brought up and talked about and shared some stories, that's what's going to make your life, folks. You've got to be committed. You've got to be consistent. You've got to be focused. Remember, follow one course until success. Use that stick-to-itiveness and create the tomorrows that you want. That's all the time we have for this episode of Passionate Talk. So until we meet again, follow your dreams and passions and manifest the life that you choose.